Hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Book Spotlight. My name is Chris, and we have a very special guest with us tonight. We're going to be talking about another Kickstarter, and this is a really good one. So I'd like to introduce my next guest, Nigel Lynch. How's it going, Nigel?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining me. And this is going to be another Kickstarter that I am promoting to get people to want to buy your comic book. And I thought maybe you can just give us a little breakdown of the journey into making this comic book.
Sure. So my name is Nigel Lynch. I am from Barbados, and I've been writing comic books for about the past 18 years. Uh, Started small and coming up, and as science fiction comic books were, one of my favorite genres. So I always wanted to do a science fiction book, and about 2 years back, or 3 years back, really, I wrote a series or began a series called It Diary Stray Dogs. And that's a science fiction book about kind of a cyberpunk dystopian style book. And it was very successful in terms of the fans kind of like it had good ratings. People that reviewed it loved it. And I said, well, I'll try to build on it. So today now this is where we came with Neon Ghost. So Neon Ghost is the latest chapter in that series, and it's about a group of sisters and their struggles growing up and what they will become in the future. So technically one of them was featured in another book, so we kind of know she's an assassin, but this is her origin story of how she became an assassin, how she was on the streets, and the things that she had to overcome in order to become the character who she is in the later books.
Okay, well, thank you very much for explaining that to us, and that sounds very, very interesting. And I thought we um, get into a little bit of a slideshow, just to let you know. I guess slowly start rolling in here. Um, I know I put out the thing early to get people interested in this particular stream, but I will share with you the presentation with everybody. Let me know when you can see it on the screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So, everybody, here is the comic book Spotlight slideshow, special edition of the Neon Ghost. And this cover is not the first cover, but I do like this cover. Nigel, is this another variant cover?
Yes, that's a variant cover done by an artist called Mike Watson. He has a YouTube show where he kind of draws stuff live, and he did a drawing for me, and I I liked it so much. I said I got to make it into a cover. So that's his cover with the colors done by a friend of mine called Matthew Clark. He's a fellow comic book artist, writer on the island here, and
Okay.
we've done a lot of projects together. So he colored it for me, and Mike Watson did the artwork. So that's going to be a special variant cover with spot foil.
Very, very nice. And here we are with the cover A cover, which is going to be, I think, basically the cover that
The main,
people are going to
yeah,
get with the Kickstarter.
yeah, that's the main cover. That cover was done by the internal artist Juan Carlos. He's from Spain, and we've been working together for about the past 3 years. So this is the third book we worked on together. A lot of the concepts in terms of the artwork, style, and that kind of stuff comes from him. A lot of the world building. So while I will describe a lot of it, he kind of just takes it and he runs with it. Sometimes it's stuff that I didn't even think of. So he will add the little, just small little pieces and different pieces, different nuance to the story or to the characters. He designs all the characters. He designed Gaz here,
Hmm.
and it becomes both of our project. So even down to when it goes off to get colored or if it's drawn by someone else, he would usually critique and say, well, this is wrong, or you have to check the sketch or make sure that you do it this way and that kind of stuff. So that kind of shows that he has also that kind of sense of ownership for the character and for the story.
Yeah, and what I like about this cover is I think she's wearing, is it like a hologram kind of coat or like poncho?
Yeah. So in the story, she was introduced in, as I said, the Diary Straight Out the Wounded 2, and she has a suit, a self suit. I took a lot of reference from things like Ghost in the Shell. There was a Metal Gear Solid Sons of Liberty.
Hmm.
When I was growing up, that was that was one of my favorite games, and that game starts with Solid Snake in a poncho that was basically octo camouflage where he was invisible. So kind of different things kind of just stick with you, and you're kind of inspired by what you read, what you watch, that kind of stuff. So Metal Gear was a huge influence to a lot of the stuff that I write about, or the way how they integrated the technology into the story and made it feel grounded, like if it was our world, but at the same time, you felt as though it was a science fiction with the nanobots and the different things. So she also has that stealth suit camouflage where she kind of goes invisible like the predator kind of thing.
Yeah, I like it. And I liked how they put the images on the hologram poncho, the camouflage suit, as we would call it. I think that probably brings out to the person when they see the comic book, a little bit into the story.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool. It's kind of got like kind of a Matrix feel to it.
Yes.
Go in the shell.
The
Yeah.
Yeah, the cover when I saw it, it reminded me of a lot of covers of DVDs that you would get back in the early 90s. You get those movies with the characters standing up, but then the cast, ensemble cast would be either silhouettes within the character, or it would be, it has that kind of feel. It feels cinematic. It feels like if it's a DVD cover. And as
No.
you said, looking at it, it kind of gives you tidbits, so you know that, hey, this character's in there, this character, and you ask kind of questions. Who are these characters?
Yes. And we're going to show you the next cover, which is cover B of the Neon Ghosts. It's just I think the colors are stunning. Um, I love the city background, and you see more of the story, and you see the. I guess they're two sisters, correct? Or am I incorrect?
Pardon, say that again. Sorry.
Are they sisters or?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They're sisters. Yeah. So we see the
Yeah,
sisters.
yeah.
The sisters, the sisters I was telling about, and the story is about them trying to kind of find each other. They're separated, and I don't want to get too much into the way how it goes, but that kind of gives you a hint. And the imagery there, you could kind of see the closeness, so you could kind of see it setting up sort of like a tragedy to
Hmm.
come and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. We don't want to give away too much of the story because we want people to go out and buy it. Here is cover C, which we saw in the beginning of the
Okay.
slides. So uh,
Mhm.
it's just stunning, beautiful, and I think the color choices are right on. Um, you can't ask for any better drawing or color, as far as I'm concerned. And I've seen a lot of comics in my life, and this is well done.
Thank you.
So I thought we'd give people a little sneak peek into your comic book, but not give too much away. So here is kind of like what she's going through, and not to give away the story or anything, but I think people get the idea that she's taken off the streets and not treated very nicely by this woman, and I just feel like it's well done. It's you can see a lot of the colors are very. I would say not colorful, but kind of mute. So the atmosphere of the place they're
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
it's you can see the colors are indicative of the atmosphere that they're in.
yeah. That's something that separates the good colorists from the great colorists. Great colorists can elevate a book, especially if they understand things like mood, uh, what colors, using color palettes, that kind of stuff. So as you said, the color palette here kind of lends to the atmosphere, the the drab nature. It's not just random colors of like bright. There's no bright colors there. And then the characters that are important, their colors also stick out so that you kind of know who is the main focus of the page or who's the focus of this section because their colors kind of pop.
Yes, and I just want to highlight a few of my guests here. Jay Bartlett, who's a good friend of mine, he does a video streaming YouTube channel. Jay
Hello.
Bartlett saying, "Hey guys," and Gaz, another YouTuber, also really big into comics. So, evening, Gaz says. I want to thank everybody
Yeah.
for coming in. If they have any questions, I did put up a poll, and the poll that I put up there says, "Will you be supporting this Kickstarter, Neon Ghost? Either yes or no." I appreciate anybody putting their vote in there. And I just want to take a look at the poll so far. And we got 67% so far saying yes, and only 33% saying no. But I think the 67% is letting you know that they're really for it.
Yeah, that's great.
It's good. As we keep on going with the presentation here, um, I have to say, here's the next one, and I really like this one the best in your comic book. Um, you see a
Mm.
shootout, and then you see the main character, I believe, cowering down, very scared, feeling out of her element.
Yeah. And that was colored that way for a reason because the just being in that white space kind of adds that feeling of loneliness, separation, that kind of stuff, and it 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 draws the reader in. The book has in a lot of action elements, as you see there with the shootout and stuff, but it also has in a lot of emotional beats. So the story is a mix of emotional storytelling and then action packed set pieces to drive the story going forward. So it's a kind of story that lends to multiple reads because you may miss something one way and then go back and then realize something else. So that's I try to do that because you don't want a comic book that you only read it once. You want to constantly be going back at it and seeing something or be able to talk about it or have an interesting discussion about the book.
I agree with you, and I think it's really good. And we have another guest coming in. My good friend Gaz from Basil's Clubhouse. He's from Australia. So he's just saying hello to Gab. And our next guest, I mean, not next guest, our next chatter, James Lucas saying, hey, comic fans, Jay, my dude. Okay, so everybody's chatting it up in the chat room there. Appreciate everybody that's coming in. You guys, like I said, if you have any questions for Nigel Lynch, please throw them out there and I will highlight them and star them. And as long as we go through the screen, I will attack those questions, um, or Nigel will. Here's another one where now she's pretty much into becoming more confident, and this is where she becomes hired assassin. Am I correct, Nigel?
Yes. So so this is that's in near the end of the book. So where we see her dressed like how she was in the prequel book before that she was introduced. So it kind of ties the two stories together. We now see her basically taking on the role of being the neon ghost, so to speak. Um, it's not a monarch. It's not a name she has in it, but in the story. But basically, this is her kind of taking on the persona of being the assassin, as you said. And this is like her first mission. This is the first time she's doing this on her own. In the beginning of the book, she's with a crew, and this is now her stepping out as a solo uh, character.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really cool, and I love the coloring in it. It's well done. I love the imagery with her binoculars. Or that one reminds me of was it Luke Skywalker when he had those binoculars in Empire Strikes Back on Hoth. Kind of
Yeah,
reminded me of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I can take it that you have a lot of influences from movies, um, video games, like you said, Metal Gear Solid. Uh, what
Mhm.
is your favorite Metal Gear game? Would you say
Uh, Snake Eater.
Snake?
That's an easy one. Snake
Oh,
Eater. Yeah, Snake Eater is my favorite one. I don't know if it was the time it came out.
mhm.
I don't know if it was the story, the main character, but I think it's a combination of. I think it's a combination of everything. The first story, the first Metal Gear, I actually played Metal Gear back on the NES. So I've played that Snake's Revenge, which isn't quite a sequel. And then it came out when I got the PlayStation. I was excited. I loved the first Metal Gear on PlayStation. Sons of Liberty. That was a that was another one where Metal Gear games were always the games that kind of push the systems and either through gameplay or graphics. So there were always that tentpole game that you just wanted to play. And Snake Eater, when that came out, that was an amazing game in terms of the graphics, the animals, the atmosphere, everything you could do. It was, and then the story was, and the characters was very interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think now we're getting to the trailer right here. Nigel, every time I see that, it gives me the the chills a little bit. I mean, it really invokes a feeling.
Thank you. That's that trailer was done by a guy called calls himself on Instagram Jamal the I think calls it the uh, illustrator or yeah he did the trailer for me. I did a great job.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job. One of those bad guy troopers reminds me of a particular um, line from Valaverse. He puts out a 6-inch military line, and it reminds me of Steel Brigade that he does. And the helmet and everything looks
Mhm.
exactly like that bad guy's helmet in your comic book. So when I saw that, I was like, I wonder if he's a big Valaverse fan. You ever heard of Valaverse?
That was mm, probably, but I can't recall. I can't say off the top of my head. I can't say yes or no. A lot of things kind of would be exposed to, but not remember. But in terms of the anything that you see like that, that would be the artist. He would be drawing from different things that he would be a fan of. There would be things that I would kind of what we tend to do when we start,
Hmm.
let's say a month before we even start drawing the pages, we have a collective Google Drive and we just start to fill it with reference photos and stuff. So we added like we just we references from video games, references from photographs, references from other art pieces. Sometimes he would recommend a movie for me to watch, or I would recommend a movie for him to watch. We would sometimes even freeze frame stuff out of movies and say, "This is the kind of feeling we want," or we would kind of reference a movie as the tone of what the story should be like, that kind of thing.
Yes, I love it, and even though it's short, it gets right to it like punches you in the gut. It gets right to it.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so I'm gonna stop sharing that, but I thought we would go into your Kickstarter a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
Let me see, get that going here. Uh, can you see it?
Yep.
All right, get this off this. All right. So basically, this is your campaign area for your Kickstarter for Neon Ghost. Um,
Mhm.
Basically, a project overview of it. I love it. Now, did you write the whole thing for the project overview for your Kickstarter?
Yeah, I did. I did all the text for the. I filled the body, the text for the Kickstarter.
Okay, awesome. It's and the project overview says step into a neon light metropolis where survival is brutal and the line between hero and villain blurs. Neon Ghost follows, was it Tala?
Yeah, Taylor.
A young woman torn from her sister and enslaved in a sweatshop. Hardened by adversity, Tala becomes a fiery mercenary fueled by revenge and drives to reunite with her sister. Teaming up with Irina, a survivor with a dark past, Taleb uncovers a sinister conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of society with striking cyberpunk visuals and powerful narrative. Neon Ghost explores resilience, sacrifice, and blurred moral lines. Sorry. Taylor journeys from the victim to empower mercenary is one of the survival redemptions and the fight for justice. Well said, and I think it sums it up. Everything. Um, Here we see a little bit more of, I guess, would be her younger sister, correct?
Yeah.
And I love that what you put in here. Who is this comic book for? And Neon Ghost is the perfect for cyberpunk fans, a Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, uh, Necromonger. Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Necromancer, yeah. Yeah, Necromancer is a cyberpunk book.
Cyberpunk. Okay. Readers who enjoy dark, complex characters and throughout provoking stories. Sci fi enthusiasts exploring the social impact of advanced technology. Comic lovers who appreciate rich atmosphere art and immersive world building. Anyone intrigued by tales and resilience, vengeance in a futuristic setting? If you're drawn to intense high stakes, action, and gritty narratives, Neon Ghost is for you. The comic is just not entertainment, it's an experience that lingers about the last page. After the last page. That's awesome. And once again, great drawings, great tone of the color. It just brings you all in. Some of the key characters: Taylor Cruz, uh, Iran Volsky or Volk. Sorry,
Yeah.
and Madame
Oh,
Zing.
yeah, Madame Zhang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are all great names. I don't want to go into too much. I just want to give people a kind of a idea. But let's go to what you are backing. So, by supporting Neon Ghost, you're bringing to life an electrifying cyberpunk comic with unforgettable characters and stunning visuals. Here's what your pledge supports: a cyberpunk, uh, gen cyberpunk sci-fi action format trade paperback. Page count 74 pages, 50 pages of story, 20 pages of bonus art, and behind the scenes look. That's ambitious comic book for 74 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, usually with a comic book, the first comic book that ever comes out, it's usually between 22 and 24 pages. But
Yeah. The reason why I tend to do bigger books is so that I could do a richer story and I wouldn't have to be running one Kickstarter now and then you have to wait a year to get the next the part two. So I tend to do it as one big story so that when you read it,
mhm,
you kind of feel you've got a full story, a full book. Sometimes the wait between indie books is so long, you could either lose interest or you just sometimes you just forget. Sometimes you just forget that you was following a story because the turnaround time takes so long. So to combat that, my idea is to write full stories and try to give more bang for your buck. So the last book I did was like 70 something pages. This one is 50 story pages with about 25 bonus pages, which is like a similar to like how the behind the scenes DVD section was. So it has like page breakdowns of the art. It has letters from the colorists, letters from the artists, people who worked on the book, gives their take on the story. It has characters, bios, and that kind of stuff. So I try to really make the Kickstarter version special.
and it's great. And printing is full color, high quality paper and binding. Exclusive covers. Cover A, which is the standard cover. Cover B, you can
Right.
add it as an option. Spot foil variant, limited edition, exclusive to Kickstarter. Exclusive Kickstarter, The Diary of the Stray Dogs, The Wounded Volume 1, Books 1 and 2, and I believe that was your other Kickstarter comic book, correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
So what I did is combine that into one bigger book because that's two stories. I just kind of made that into one big book with a special edition cover for this Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And, you know, you know, you're not asking people who maybe not that might be this their first Kickstarter, you're not asking a lot. 15, which will give you the digital version of the comic book. With also, I
Mhm.
guess you're bringing in wingless comics in here as well as a bundle,
Yeah.
which is really cool. So they can get a treat of basically they're getting 3 comics for the price of $15, which is really
Yeah.
good because you go to a comic book store these days, you're spending between $5 and $6 for one single issue. So that's a good value. Uh, Here's the other covers. Let's see. I think there's a crossover they were talking about. Justice One and
Yeah.
Nightfall from Wingless Comics.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff, and I think people should back it. Uh, Here's the black and white of the one that we saw in the slideshow in color. Really well done. It's even stunning in black and white.
Yeah. Someone was telling me I should put out a black and white version of it with all the
Yeah,
words. Uh, if we get enough, if we get enough of pledges, I may actually do that. Open a tier and just do a black and white version.
yeah. I know people want color, but sometimes even black and white can be incredible for a comic book. Um, let's see. Let's keep on. Um, I'm gonna stop sharing that. I don't want to give too much away, but this is really great comic book, and I
Thank you.
think I will be supporting it as well when I have the time. But definitely, this looks like one that I want to have in my collection, and I think people should go out there and support people like yourself who have written other comic books and done other great Kickstarters. So it's good that this is not your very first Kickstarter, and I feel like more continued success and I know the Kickstarter has already been funded, but the more pledges you get, the better it's going to be for everybody. Um, that's going to probably, like you said, you probably want to do if you get more pledges, you do a black and white version, which would be very cool. Um,
Mhm.
how many bigger pledges have you gotten and for this Kickstarter?
You mean in terms of the
Yeah.
largest pledge I
Yes.
got? No, so there's a tier that's
Okay.
$200 where you get all the books. There's a metal poster, 11 by 17 metal poster, and you also get to be a character in the next book. So someone kind of snatched that up. So that was one of the higher tier ones. Uh, Personally, my goal is to get 100 backers. Uh, my goal is to try to, build a fan base. It's to try to get as many people on board, as many people sharing the book, so that the Kickstarters could continue to grow. It's Yes, the money is important in order to produce, but it's the fans that kind of it's the lifeblood of the series. So, you know, I was telling other people, if you can't back, share the book. A share is just as good. Especially when you're in the creator community, uh, you can't rely on the creators to back everything because we are also trying to fund our own books, or there's so many other Kickstarters. So the idea is to try to gain fans outside of the creator community, try to share cross pollinate fans. So that's what we're doing with Wingless. Wingless is on board with us. So hopefully we will get some Wingless fans. Wingless will get some Wiseacre fans, and both fan bases can kind of grow. So, you will, as a creator, support each other, but the onus is not on creators backing creators. It's trying to build a fan base.
Yeah, and that's well said, and that's what we're doing here today is creators like yourself and me. I'm actually working on a comic book as well, called it's a horror book called Beautiful People. David Drake
Nice.
is basically taking over a mortuary business from his dad, who had cancer and passed away. So he takes over the mortuary business, but there's some murders that are going on in his hometown, and basically, um, in his past, when he was young, he used to see dead people. So he's a medium, and he suppressed that medium um, stuff when he turned 18. But now, with all these murders going on later in his adult years, um, his medium powers are coming back, and the victims are crying out to him for justice, to make sure the killer gets caught. And during this whole thing, because he's part of a mortuary business, a police detective thinks he's the actual murderer, and
Ah, that's
as
nice.
he's on the detective is on a quest to make sure that he takes out David Drake, and he just thinks right off the bat that because he works in the mortuary business and a lot of the victims are coming to his mortuary, that he's the killer. So it's very interesting. Um,
That sounds very interesting. I think horror is one of the hardest genres to pull off in the form of a comic book sometimes, especially when you don't want to just rely on
mhm.
gore. Uh, it's hard to kind of keep that suspense on the page. It takes it takes a lot of work, uh, and a lot of planning and calculation. So a horror book has to be driven by page turns, uh, things like splash pages. Those are very important with a horror book, and then even down to the color and tone and picking the right artist for the book.
Yeah,
So,
I had some very cool people from the comic book industry really help me out. I had I don't know if you heard of him,
mm,
Alex Sanchez, who's done Marvel, um, Teenage
mm,
Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's done GI
okay,
Joe. He
mm,
created uh, the character designs for David Drake, Amy, and Gwen from my comic book. So I had him on my show. Uh, when I showed him the actual front cover issue 1 and 2, because he hadn't seen the final renderings of the cover, and he was like, "Oh, those look incredible." He goes, "You know, I like actually the second comic book cover better than the first one." He said they were both good, but he liked the second one better. And I got um, a really good colorist from Marvel, um,
okay.
Williams. I forget his first name, but he did me a favor and charged me very little to do the coloring.
Mm,
So we got a question from James Lucas here, and it says, Nigel, who are some of your influences?
okay. Some of my influences in terms of comic books, it's going to sound strange. So for one, Garth Ennis, his Punisher Max series was very instrumental in the way how I kind of tell the gritty style of stories, and the the author of Walking Dead. His name escapes me right now. So to everyone of the writer of Invincible. What's his name again? Um, I can't remember his
That's
name
okay.
right now. But those are the main those are the main influences. I try to borrow or most stuff that I kind of read. If I'm a big fan of the genre, it will kind of stick with me. But a lot of the stuff in the 80s, I kind of read the regular Marvel and DC
Mhm.
books. But as I got older, I kind of resorted to just reading a lot of Image and a lot of those indie books. Kirkman, that's the other person,
Oh yeah.
Kirkman. Uh, Robert Kirkman. I kind of read a lot of indie books. I like indie books because the stories feel a lot fresher. They're if they're done well, I can't kind of tell where the story is going. With Marvel and DC books, we know that it's going to be a hard reset eventually. Um, so there's a sense of finality when you read a indie book because the main character could die, or I like something that can end. So I like limited series. I don't like something that's going to run on for the next 20 years. Uh, Mark Miller is another writer that I kind of like a lot of his stuff. So he had a book called King of Spies and The Big Game, and that was the last two things from him that I really enjoyed.
And I noticed that your actual publisher's in the chat.
Okay.
So that's really cool that we got the publisher of your comic book in my chat room. Very,
Yeah,
very nice.
the Frederick level.
Yes, yes, yes. He's a very nice guy, and I have to say he's a great writer as well and creator of comic books. And it's I guess he's kind of building a dynasty with a lot of people wanting to put out comic books, and starting with you as well.
Yes. The way how we kind of came together, it was almost like pure accident in a way. We were just talking on Facebook, and we were talking about books, sharing ideas, critiquing work, stuff like that. And he told me that he kind of liked a book that I had, and he would like to publish it. And I was telling him, well, it's kind of wrapped up right now, but I have some other ideas. I have some other stories. Would you be interested in, checking one of these stories out? And he took a chance on me, and we did the first book, and I did the Kickstarter. It was successful, but it was a learning experience. I learned a lot from that Kickstarter. As I was telling you behind the backstage, the Kickstarter is a really strange beast when it comes to comics, and even the psychology of planning the campaigns, how much you ask for, how long you run it for, who is it for, that kind of thing. And you never know what it's going to fund and what's not going to fund. I've seen books that I thought was a shoe in to
Mhm.
fund, and it
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah,
So
yeah. With Kickstarters, it's a funny thing. Sometimes you can get a whole flood of Kickstarters all at once, and I don't know how people can just, oh, I want this one, or I want this one, or I want that one. It's hard, and when I decide on a comic book for a Kickstarter, I look through everything very meticulously. I go over all the artwork, and I see how much I know for people that maybe if they're referred first Kickstarter, they don't know how to do it. So I look beyond that, but I want to see how much they're invested in their book,
hmm,
and you can tell by the writing of the Kickstarter, you know, how much they're invested in it. If it's done kind of half half done, and you don't see a lot of um, covers or drawings or to explain the comic or even in great words or detail, I feel like that Kickstarter is not going to do very well. Where yours is very detailed, very wordy, and it grabs people from different, movies, comics,
Mm.
you know, the genre of steampunk. I think people are aware of steampunk because, a lot of comic conventions, people do steampunk, dress up, role play.
Mm.
We have another question from James. Where did the idea of neon ghosts originate?
Okay, so she is a character that was originally in a book I did called The Diary of the Stray Dogs, The Wounded Too. She was the last mercenary to join a crew of mercenaries to go on a mission, uh, almost like a suicide mission. And her origin was questioned within the book. They weren't sure if they wanted to hire her because they didn't know where she came from and they didn't know if they can trust her. So the mission goes on and she's almost killed. And that's basically the first time we saw her in this story. So the idea came up to me where all the characters that I kind of write for the books that have the ensemble cast, they have a backstory for each of them. I don't always write down the backstory, or I don't plan to do a comic book for each character's origin, but the design of this character, the fan response of the character from the first book, it made me take a chance and write this script. And I went and I pitched two books to the artist, the sequel, and then I also pitched this book. And the artist said he likes this one. So once the artist was on board, I knew that he was going to knock out the park. So we went with this one.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice. For a person that's starting to get into comic books or starting to get into wanting to pledge for a Kickstarter, what would you say to that person that's slowly getting into funding Kickstarters or getting into comic books slowly?
You mean as a collector or as a
As a
buyer?
buyer,
Or
yes, sorry.
hmm, yeah, I would say one thing is to take your time. I back a lot of books, and I only back the books that really speak to me, that really jump out at me. They're books, they're popular, but they don't interest me. They're books that I can tell. So there's certain telltale signs to know that the I don't want to say it's a scam, but maybe you're not going to get the book, or as you said, if the page isn't descriptive enough, if there's not enough artwork, if when you look at the creator and you see that the creator hasn't backed any books, which means that he's not really a part of the Kickstarter community, or he's not really into the indie scene. Sometimes he may be, but usually the ones who are even trying to get in, they try to kind of get their feet wet first by looking back in a few books, understanding how things go, reaching out to the community kind of thing. Um, One of the things I kind of look for when I go to back a book, I want to know how much pages it is. Sometimes I would even reach out to the creator if he doesn't have it on the page and ask him how many pages. I would even ask how far along is the book? Is it going to come out? And as a creator, if someone had to ask me these things, I would actually be happy because it shows that someone is kind of interested in my book enough to try to seek me out to ask these questions. So I don't mind asking these questions. And by doing this, I've actually built friendship with a lot of different creators and people. Um, just kind of be patient, back what you like. And there's a lot of good books out there on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, I want to give out a little shout out to the publisher. Uh,
Yeah.
Magnus. I think everybody can see it pretty well.
Mhm.
You should also back Neon Ghost, but you should check out this publisher. He's put out a lot of comic books and helped a lot of creators and writers. Uh, I think he is building an empire, and I think he's, with your help, um, with great writing, great creators out there, I think we're getting great comic books, and we're getting
Thank you.
to a level where they're going up against the big names like Marvel, like Image, like DC, Malibu Comics, um, Dynamite. I mean, these are some big powerhouse names. And now we see Kickstarters with the creators and writers putting out these wonderful, vibrant comic books that are competing with mainstream comics today. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a good thing. As you said, given enough time, lightning is gonna strike, and one of these creators, and there are a few creators that actually run campaigns that go well into the double, like 50,000, 100,000. It's rare, but it does happen. Um, and the important thing is about building a fan base, building a community that will recognize the quality. So you have to produce a quality book. You have to produce a quality book, not only in terms of story and art, in terms of the production values of the books. So the books have to be designed and have to be printed, almost better than the big two, because you're paying premium price for these things. So those are the things that kind of set some of those indies that are successful apart. Um, but you can't do it without the fan base, and the fan base takes a time to build. That's why you do these shows and you try to get out there and you meet people and you try to send people your books and that kind of stuff. Um, because it will pay off in the end if you are successful and you manage to get through or get over that hump. It will, you know, and who knows what's going to happen in terms of, we live in a time when comic books are being used as TV series, movies, a lot of stuff that is really good right now on streaming services, and in the cinema it was a comic book first.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the let's say Hollywood, for want of a better word, has been mining comic books for stories for a while, and I think it's because comic books as a medium is one of the best places to tell a story. There's so much you can do. There's no budget in terms of the how fantastical you can make your story. There's no budget in terms of the explosions. There's no budget in terms of the chaos, that kind of thing. And because sometimes the time you have, you can tell a really intricate tale and get into really breaking down the elements of a story. So when someone comes to convert it into a series or a movie, all the work is done most of the time. So you do get even to a point where the movies and series sometimes can't live up to the quality of what the storytelling was within the comic book.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel like this comic book could be actually a good anime series. It could be a good movie. It could be a good mini series for someone like Amazon or Netflix to pick up,
I
And
would love it. I would love that.
yeah, I think slowly, I think Amazon and Netflix know that they're going to go out there with some indie comics, and they're going to approach these creators and publishers and say, "Hey, I want to do a anime or a series based on your comic book." And I think once that starts happening and we get the very first one out there, I think more is going to follow behind, and it's going to do this chain effect, and people are going to get a broader range of some really good shows. I know right now one that took a while to get onto mainstream was The Walking Dead.
Mm.
Nobody liked that comic book when it first came out, you know. And
I,
I feel
I actually liked it. I was a fan of it, but it was I wasn't the one who liked it. I think it was a case that it was it was for a special audience. Because as I tell people, The Walking Dead was a book that it was depressing to read. It kind of ate at your soul. It was you enjoyed it, but it was a roller coaster of emotion. So sometimes people could not take that. You know what I mean? You can't, hey, here's this nice book to read, and the person says, I love this character, and then 10 issues down, the character is dead in the most brutal fashion. I've had people just stop reading when their favorite character died, So
yeah.
there are a few cases now that I know of where small indie publishers and indie creators are getting that chance to be on the bigger stage. There's a book by a guy called David Crownson, Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. I think that's being picked up for a Disney series.
Oh,
And he also has another book called Killer Bee. And I think that's being developed into a movie. So we're kind of slowly seeing it trickle down to the smaller indies as a breeding ground for development for bigger movies and stuff. And I think too, one of the reasons why they will come to some of the smaller indies is it's not going to be tied up so much in rights, or the person is going to be more willing to take a chance at signing over because they want to get the exposure. So
yeah.
we don't know where things will go from here. Stranger things have kind of happened.
Yeah, I just think with Kickstarters, we're seeing a broader spectrum of. I mean, I could go on Kickstarter right now, and you can. There's horror, there's fantasy, there's westerns, there's all
Mm.
genres of Kickstarter comics out there, and I think people should go out there, look at a Kickstarter. You don't have to back them right away, like you said. Maybe share it with somebody and who wants to back it, and I think once people understand that there are some really good comic books out there and for Kickstarters, and they should be celebrating these comic books like we are right now with yours. I think this is going to
But
be a blockbuster hit, in my opinion.
I get
I've seen a lot of the images that you have sent me that I'm not going to show on here on the show because I want people to go out and buy it. But we did show some of the images, but
yeah,
all the images you did show me were incredible, and I was just like, I can get into this. I can see myself reading it and enjoying it. I love sci-fi. I like Blade Runner. So when you put in there Blade Runner, steampunk, you can even put aliens in that equation.
yeah.
I think
Aliens is one of my favorite science fiction. Those are all of those science fiction movies I kind of grew up with in the 80s, where science fiction was this genre that crossed over with everything: horror, westerns, action. Uh, you know, it dabbled and it crossed the line. So when I was growing up, there were a lot more science fiction movies than they have kind of now as mainstream. We kind of have science fiction now, but it's not quite the same. Uh, I think in the 80s, we kind of embrace more of the craziness of science fiction and just accepted it, like Robocop, Predator 2. This was just a mainstream movie that we just went to watch, and it wasn't billed as a science fiction. It wasn't called a science fiction, really. It was just RoboCop and you just watched it. You know what I mean? So while no, it's a little different.
Yeah, I think the one that really shocked my parents and got my interest was Terminator. I remember I went to my local video store and I was like, "Oh, I want this one to watch." And my dad was like, "Terminator." Well, and he looked at it. He was like, at first he was like, "Oh, no, 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 no," and I was like, I'm in my teens, so why can't I do it?" And he's like, "Okay, I'll let you watch this one, but you're gonna watch it with me." And I said, "Okay." But I remember watching that first Terminator movie, and the favorite line he says, "I'll be back." I
Yeah,
loved it. And I was just like, I was hooked. And all us kids at school the next day would go and say, "Oh, did you watch that Terminator movie? Oh yeah, that was great." And our parents would be like, "Oh, what did we start doing?" But it fueled our imaginations, and we were
yeah,
like, the possibilities of this actually happening in our young minds was like, could you imagine a Terminator coming back to the future wanting to kill your unborn child? And it's like, kill you before you produce this child that's gonna save the world from these Terminators. But we have another question from James. I love these questions. What books do you read and might recommend as far as comic books or just books in general?
okay. So when it comes to books, I tend to listen to audiobooks because I'm able to do my desk job and still listen to something. So I when it comes to audiobooks, I like to listen to a lot of Stephen King, uh, science fiction books, sometimes short stories, because that way I could kind of knock it off in the day. So I would go through more stories that way. When it comes to comic books, I kind of read whatever is popular, sometimes just to see what's going on. So for instance, like the new DC Batman series, I will kind of pop in just to see what that's about because it's getting a lot of buzz. But in terms of books that I kind of seek out, um, I tend to like books that. So, for instance, I enjoy Mark Miller's books. Anything along that kind of line. It doesn't have to be superhero. It could be supernatural. Could even be horror sometimes. It the cover just has to kind of speak to me, and I will kind of look it up. Um, something that's a little different. So there was one I kind of read the other day about a guy whose father killed a superhero and killed him in front of him. And when he grew up, he was haunted by the. It doesn't quite tell you, but it kind of infers that he's haunted by the ghost of the sidekick, who was also killed. And the two superheroes were kind of allegories with Batman and Robin, but it was a very interesting take. And this character now was taking over the mantle. I think it's called Skapla or something like that. It has a name like the sound from when Batman punches. Skapla or Skapla or something like that. It's not a it's a it's a weird name. And sometimes it's kind of hard to find. Yeah, so I kind of read some of everything, and I it helps as a comic book writer to read as many comic books as possible because you it helps you to lay out pages. Sometimes you kind of do a bit of reverse magic in your mind, so you see a page and you wonder how do you how did this person write this script? So then you try to write the script for this page, or you count the panels in a page. Sometimes that's what I would do. I would look at a page and I would say, how did they do this? And then I would count the panels and say, how did he pull off a 7 panel page, or how did he pull off a 8 panel page? Because as a creator, the higher panel pages are the harder pages to write or to get to come across on the page. So when you see it, someone like did it well, you study that because that's a lesson to you that you may get to use later. So then when you're stumped with your page, you could say, I remember they did this in this book, or how to make a page with talking heads look interesting. And then you see how they did it in a book. So you never know where you're going to learn something from. And if you can't get it from just reading only one type of book, you got to kind of read different books from different companies and different, even, I read a little bit of manga sometimes. Not all of them, but if there's a title that kind of interests me, sometimes it's 80s manga, sometimes stuff like that. So just read as much stuff as possible.
I just want to go back to the poll, and it says, "Who will be supporting this new Kickstarter, Neon Ghosts?" It's up to 80%. Nigel.
That's great. That's great. That's great.
That means only 20% said no. So 80%, to me, that's like a winner.
I really appreciate
Um,
that.
yeah, yeah. Also, I want to ask, and I know it's probably going to, a lot of writers don't like to talk about it, but I think it's interesting to get creators and comic book writers aspect on it. Do you feel like we need more diversified ethnic characters in comic books today?
Uh, yes. But the way how I think it should be done in terms of, as a creator, you should write what you want to write, or you should create what you feel the need to create. Um, if it's from you, it comes off. It's a more pure art form, so to speak. So, for instance, of myself, when I write, when I wrote the Diary of the Stray Dogs, some of the characters are from the Caribbean. The book isn't totally from the Caribbean, but some of the characters are there, and they kind of intermingle with different types of characters from different parts of the world, and it feels as organic as possible, and it's just a story. I don't tend to bring things into a book just because it has to make sense to the story. So, I'm not against doing bringing any type of character, or for instance, Neon Ghost, the character is from the Philippines, and that was set up in her backstory, and there's a reason behind it and that kind of stuff. It wasn't like I orchestrated and said, well, we need characters from this, or we need these type of characters. Sometimes I will write a female character because I find writing female characters to be very, very interesting. They are, they're there's a joy to writing female characters sometimes, especially if you do it correctly and you make the character believable or interesting. So yes, there is a need for diversity in books, comics, movies, and but I think you'll only get it done correctly when the people who do it for genuine purposes, or it comes from within, it comes from themselves. You know, they do it not just trying to please a crowd or to tick a box. It has to come, and it has to have a purpose within the story. Certain things within a story just don't make sense, and that's it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. The reason I wanted to ask that question was because um, I don't know if are you a big Star Wars fan?
Yeah.
So acolytes, they put in
Mhm.
ethnic characters because they felt like it needed to be that in Star Wars, and they also made them one of the characters be gay, and
Mhm.
I feel like they were the writer that wrote the script for it was just kind of peer pressure, and
Mhm.
it came off to me the wrong way. It could have been a
Mm,
better Star Wars because I don't think Star Wars, when George Lucas wrote it, he didn't think about ethnicity. He just thought about a
mm,
good story with a lot of different lores and stuff that he enjoyed reading, like mythology. Um,
right.
Knights of the Old Republic, that was based around, the medieval times. King Arthur, George pulled a lot of different things from World War II. Um, so I just feel like the writer of Acolytes shouldn't be listening to what people are saying out there. I think they should be putting out a good story, and that's what's going to make Star Wars great again. Is a
Mm.
good story, and not
Yeah,
having.
well, nothing beats a good story. Um, and that's it. Good story and good characters. And as I tell people, you can't. It's a dance between the two. You can't. You can have a story with great characters, and if the story isn't good, the whole thing's going to fall apart. You can have a really good story and have poor character development, poor character design, and the story will also fall apart. So it's a matter of doing both. And if something is done with the best of intentions in terms from a place of, let's say, from the heart, to me, it will come off. Um, it'll come off a little bit more nostalgic, more real, more to have more feeling. As I said, things like when I do, I've had books where I've had certain elements to do with same sex relationships, different ethnicities and stuff like that, but it did tie into the plot of the story. It did. If I took it out of the story would fall apart. So that's how you know that something is integral to a story. Because if you take that element out of the story will fall apart.
Yeah, I agree. And then I have a comment from Paul Hughes. Not everyone can speak on the inaccuracies of every different walk of life, so writing diversified is essential. Good point. I also, Paul Hughes said, Star Wars was an ode to the American serials. Also, diversity was playing into that. Okay. Um, I don't know where to go with that one. that kind of threw me off a little bit. Maybe you understand better than I do.
So the Star Wars, what he's kind of talking about is, which is true. So Star Wars was basically, you're familiar with Flash Gordon
Yes.
and those kind of serials, right? So
Mm,
that was in that same vein of those stories. It's technically the John Carter, the John Carter series. So all of these things were things that he kind of borrowed from. So yes, which is the stuff from that time. So yes, that's where the talk about the cereals and that stuff comes from.
um, what I was going to say. Also, if I notice a lot of writers are coming out of Brazil, the Caribbean now. We have one of the guy from Brazil who's doing Storm right now for Marvel. Uh,
He's not from Brazil. He's
he's
from
not from
Nigeria.
Brazil. He's in
Not from
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
Okay,
Yeah, Nigeria. Yeah.
but we're starting to have more good writers that are coming from
Mhm.
all different parts of the world now, and I think he's doing a real good job on Storm. I watched a live stream last night on Black Comic Lords, and
Mhm.
I didn't know that a lot of people were not happy with his writing. You know, as people I guess we're getting rubbed the wrong way because he was trying to make Storm more personable, but her you see her strengths, her weaknesses, not like
Right.
in where when Chris Claremont wrote it, it was a different style. When you get
Right.
his style, I've noticed that there's times where Storm's very sad and emotional,
Right.
and there's times where she's struggling with certain issues, and I feel like he gets more of Storm than some other writers do, and I think there's
Right.
nothing
So
wrong with.
my heart goes off to him in terms for a lot of reasons. Uh, I personally have kind of said I wouldn't want to write for Marvel or DC.
Mhm.
And it's not because I don't like the characters. A lot of my favorite characters are Marvel and DC characters. But the fan base, you cannot please a fan base that is that big. You can't please a fan base that is so polarizing. Uh, I've kind of ducked in and out of the series. I've read some
Mhm.
of it. I've been following it. I will catch up with it. If something comes out, I will check it out. Um, and the the thing about writers from all over the world is that we all come up from different cultures, be it from Brazil to Japan. Uh, we have different ideas, we have different histories, we have different ways of doing storytelling, that kind of stuff. So when you do bring these new writers into the Western world or the Western style of comic books, they bring something a little different. So sometimes it's fresh, sometimes it's good. For instance, one of the TV series that I was enjoying on TV, Netflix was Squid Game, and that's different. We've kind of seen that kind of story before, but there was something about the way how it was done, the way how elements of the storytelling, the culture, stuff like that. So we also live in a time where the world is also smaller because of the internet. Um, the lines between certain cultures are now becoming blurred or becoming cross. You can get stuff from different parts. So there'll probably be more. There'll be probably more as we go forward. There'll be probably more writers from different parts of the world that we didn't even think about. And in terms of people being upset, it is comics. Somebody will get upset. You can't please everybody when it comes to comic books. If I always say, I wish I had a fan base that could get upset and fight over something that I wrote. So it's a testament to the love of the character and the love of the franchise.
Yeah, I just wasn't aware of that. He was having that kind of stigma on him until Black Comic Lords brought it to his out there on their stream. So I really think, like you said, there's some people not going to like what people write in different styles and everything. But I think we need to have more of an open mind. And I think when he was writing this style of Storm, I think people were just wanting a more aggressive style
Yeah,
that Chris Claremont did back in the 90s, where Storm was more aggressive than she
right,
is today. And I applaud him for wanting to show different sides of Storm, because that
mhm,
shows as a writer that you know what you're doing in your craft. If you're just one sided and you only do that type of style, then you're not going to get a lot out of your character.
no,
And
that's true.
I, I applaud him, and I think the people that are being negative towards him, okay, you don't like his style, go buy another comic book, go buy
Mhm.
something else. But I don't think he should be ostracized for the way he did Storm. I, you know, I love comic books of all germ. I don't care who the writer is. I don't care what the character is. If it's a good story to me and I can get through it and read it and be enticed by it, then that's all matters to me. I've got my money's
Yeah.
worth. And
I yeah, I grew up in the 80s reading comic books when we didn't know who wrote the book. I actually thought Stanley wrote all the books from Marvel. So we did
yeah,
so we just kind of just as you said, it was all about the story. When it came to the art, sometimes I didn't even realize that the only if the artist was really different. We noticed the artist change. It was about the story then. The people behind the book weren't the celebrities like how they were today, which
yeah,
is kind of good and bad.
yeah. I just feel like people know like popular names. Like I'll throw them out: Tom McFarlane, Jim Lee, Frank Miller. A lot of these are great illustrators, writers, and I think they get over popularized too much, and I think people try to treat them like celebrities, and they shouldn't be. They're just doing what they love to do, their passion. Like yourself, like me. Um,
Mm.
I just love writing, so I have a passion for it, and I feel like once we start making these writers and illustrators celebrities, we're getting away from what I feel like they're trying to convey in their comic books. What do you feel?
Um, I understand what you're saying. I do agree to a certain extent, but a lot of it too is unless the person wants to be a celebrity, we can't make them into celebrities. They're just kind of popular, but some of those guys that you talked about are still very down to earth. Um, I've seen Mark Miller on some just regular YouTube channels. So that kind of shows that they will still kind of just talk to you. They're not out of your stratosphere kind of thing. I try and think if I've ever spoke to anyone. I have never really spoken to any big creator, but I've known people who said they've spoken to someone or they've reached out and the person responded to them. So it's
Mm,
still good on them that they still have a 1 foot grounded in reality, kind of, so to speak.
mm,
But sometimes, yes, we as a people like to create celebrities. It
yeah,
doesn't always be that the person wants to be a celebrity.
yeah. Because I've came across a few comic book illustrators that I approached and wanted to have them on my show, and they just said, "Chris, I would really love to be on your show, but I'm terrified to be on screen."
Mm,
And I can understand that because we all have fears, and
yeah.
um, it's not easy to come on a podcast or a live stream and put yourself out there. But I appreciate
Mhm.
you coming here on Comic Book Spotlight. I have another question from James, and he says, "Do you have other projects in the works, or are you solely focused on Neon Ghost?"
Okay. Uh, I do have some other projects. They're all set within the same universe. Uh, there's the Diary of Stray Dogs, and there's also a series that I'm doing with Whiteacre called Critical Ops Task Force. So Critical
Mm-hmm.
Ops Task Force is that's probably going to be the next book I release. I don't know when, uh, but that's a more over the top action pack kind of book. It's basically G.I. Joe meets science fiction uh, with with those kind of 80s kind of feel. So you got these meathead kind of mercenaries, uh, super soldiers, There's a saying that once you put Space Marines into something, you can't take them out. So like,
Yeah.
so one of my favorite things is that archetype of the Space Marine super soldier. So they are very much influenced. There's a movie, I don't know if you're familiar with a movie called with Universal Soldier by
Yes.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a picture that I kind of loved growing up, and I guess it kind of stuck in my head, in my subconscious. So that's a little bit of what these characters are like. They're a group of mercenaries, super soldiers, nanobots, but it's set in the exact same world as Neon Ghosts. So they actually make an appearance in Neon Ghosts, and some they may in the future make an appearance in Diary of Stray Dogs, and the whole world kind of reference each other. So there are more books in the series I plan to make, but right now I don't know what's gonna happen. I could come up with an idea tomorrow because there's so many characters, there's so many different avenues I can explore. Sometimes I may actually do a superhero book set in the same universe based on the style of to the type of superheroes I kind of like. So that's the beauty of being a creator. You can also create what you would like to see or is not out there in the market.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I never thought of, I'm going to say that I didn't think it was possible to stay in the same universe, but and do a different kind of more high action. But that's a good idea, and maybe I think I'll play off that a little bit with my comic book, and maybe I'll introduce a character from one of my other projects, and bring it into the same universe. I think that's kind of cool. Never really thought about that, because
Yeah.
you're taking one comic book, but it's still in the same universe, and you're introducing a new character, and
Yep.
then going on, and here's a new comic book. James also says that sounds right up my alley. Will it be a Kickstarter?
Most likely it will be. I am not sure as yet. If it depends on how well this Kickstarter goes or what we decide in the future, but more than likely it will be a Kickstarter. It will be the critical ops books. They're smaller books. Um, so they're like 32 pages. The idea is to try to see if I can knock out as many of them to form a trade someday. And the style of writing of those books, they're all one shot stories, but they have an overall narrative. So they're kind of like when you watch a series in the 80s, it would be each episode was a story of the week, but sometimes in the background there was a recurring character, or they were going to the whole season was one arc. So that's what I'm planning to do with that. But so there are two stories running at the same time. A smaller one that just takes up a page or two to tie the books together, but each book is a mission. So the beauty of doing books this way too, the idea is to you should be able to read the books out of order, so that
Mhm.
when you do read, let's say you read two first and then you read book one would just feel like a flashback, and it would also have parts that you said, oh yeah, I don't see what they meant in this book, and without it being, because I think that sometimes one of the barriers of entry that people have, especially with the indies, sometimes is when someone has an indie book and they're trying to promote book seven,
Mhm.
the reader or the viewer feels as though they need to get all six books. And
Right.
sometimes that's a daunting task for the person to jump into a series at seven, and the story also connects so strongly and so heavily that if you miss a part, that you can't catch up. Comics, when I was growing up, was designed that you could not ever read a Daredevil book and just pick up from any point and just start reading. Yes, it would be from tie into stuff before, but they would kind of hold your hand and bring you up, that kind of thing. So a lot of my writing style is designed to not alienate the reader, have you learn stuff organically, but to also try to make sure that every story is encapsulated within a book. So it has a beginning, middle, end.
Okay. Here's just something that was asked another comic book creator from Kickstarter. Let's. Are you familiar with a video game called Fortnite?
Yes.
What if Fortnite came to you and said, "I want to take neon ghosts and make some skins out of them"? How would you feel about that?
I feel great. I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
Uh, it's exposure. Fortnite. I'm not sure where it stands today, but I had my time of playing Fortnite and trying to win Fortnite. It's one of those things that Fortnite has is one of those properties that I think they've featured almost every franchise under the sun, from John Wick to Thanos. So
Yeah.
I would like to be in those. I would love to be a part of that pantheon.
Yeah. And I just done the was it was updated the new season, and now they're introducing Mortal Kombat, and it's kind of like with their Fortnite skins. It's kind of like a robbery kind of wolf horror, and I think they have this one pickle dressed up in a get out, you know, a mask over his head and everything, and I think it's really a good idea that Fortnite goes out to these comic books. They've done, you know, Marvel, they've done DC, Batman, and I think if Fortnite reached out to the indie comic books creators and said, "Hey, we want to feature some of your great work, and but we want to use it as a skin so people can play as a character of Neon Ghost," I think that would bring out more exposure for you, and I think it would elevate Fortnite even more because then people are going, "I enjoyed that skin. I'm gonna go out and buy a Nigel Lynch comic book now."
Yeah, yeah.
What else did James says? It says, "Does Jay need a new skin?" Yeah, that's our good friend that came in earlier. And James, I would have to agree. He needs a new skin for Fortnite. We're actually going to be playing Fortnite tomorrow. Uh, he gets his community members. You have to be a member, and we go into Fortnite and we play together while he's streaming online. So I definitely think he has to get a new skin. I have to buy a new skin for Fortnite. I played a little bit today, but I think um, companies like video games and like I said, streaming companies, they should be looking into indie comics. They should be
Hmm.
um, seeing how they can reach more people in different countries. Um, I'm actually working with someone who's in Yugoslavia right now, a female who's creating a comic book. She doesn't speak very much English, but I'm going to have her on my stream. I said I would do most of the talking because there's that language barrier.
Hmm.
But I really enjoy her artwork, and I think there's a lot of people in different countries that love the same things that Americans do. And I think people love comic books, and um, I keep on hearing, "Well, comic books are dead. Comic books are dead. Comic books are dead." But I don't agree with that. I think it's slowed down. It's not
Yeah.
as big as it was in the '80s and the '90s, but I still feel like adults, even teens, maybe not younger children, but are into comics still, and they might not buy as much, but I still think comics are a great outlet for people to read. You know.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most versatile mediums out there. Uh, I don't think it will ever die. It may get smaller, but I don't think it will die. The reason why I don't think it will die is because it still has that uh, ability where anyone with talent can create a comic book. So once that's still there, there's still people drawing and people writing. Even if I had to die off for now, it would come back because it's it's so accessible for you to do. You know, as I said, it's the most versatile. You can do from horror to kids to sexy books to anything with it. So it's a medium that's so versatile. It can tell a message. It can be serious. It could be funny. So it's not. It may not be popular now, but in history we know that things tend to ebb and flow. So it may not be popular now, or it may drop, but it's going to come back at some point, and maybe in a different form. Or it may not be print. It may be digital. It may be whatever technology is in the future.
Mhm. Now we keep on hearing about AI, and I always point this out to comic book writers, illustrators. There's some people that do not like AI at all. How do you
Mhm.
feel about AI helping out in comic books?
Okay, so with something as new as AI, in terms of where you fall, it's something that's going to constantly change. And in the beginning, I didn't have a problem with AI. A lot of people didn't have a problem with it because one, it was clearly recognizable. It didn't match it in terms of like it was nowhere close to what artists were doing, and people were using it as references. So you would have people come and do like a AI reference, and then they would draw on top of it. And I'm talking about when AI was really, really rough, where it looked like you had to kind of squint to kind of distinguish
Mhm.
stuff. Then it started to go forward, and then it started to go into this part where it was a bit of that uncanny valley where it looked kind of real, but too real and then too fake and all that stuff. Uh, I personally can't draw, so technically AI would be something for me that I should be jumping at. But as it went on, at first I said I'm not saying I was not impressed by some of the stuff that AI will produce. But
Mhm.
to me, one of the downsides of AI, which I find now to be a negative, is when I'm searching for stuff and I'm searching for references of stuff.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of the image pics are flooded with AI, and or if you or if you are learning to draw. So I dabbled with drawing. So
Mhm.
something like anatomy. So you need to go online and you pull off models or you pull off pictures, and you would trace or you would copy anatomy to learn, or you use as references to draw. The problem is with AI being so prevalent, it means that artists who are copying AI are going to pick up bad mistakes, or because there's certain things that if you have an artistic eye that you're going to tell a neck is too long, or a hip, the the proportions are off. But someone who's learning, they may not realize these things. So then by the time that they've used AI as a reference all their life, they now have bad habits that they can't unlearn. So on that aspect, there's aspects in terms of uh, people being put out of work, but that's technology on a whole. technology will always advance and put people out of work. Me personally, if I like an artist and he and I can work together and we come to a good price point, I don't see the need where I need to use AI because I I have someone who's working with me. We've negotiated a price. We've developed a friendship, and there's certain things too that AI could never do. As much as people think it's easy, it's not that easy to do a prompt and get what you want. It takes a lot of time and a lot of prompting and a lot of back and forth. Whereas with a human being, if you have a person who has the talent and the understanding, you and them can have a discussion and they can give you what they want. Sometimes they
Mm.
can give you what you want that you know that you didn't even know what you wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it will never beat a good artist. And there's also something to do with like there's a thing about piracy and pirates. Pirates will people would always say, well, piracy is bad, and if they didn't have piracy, uh, more things would you get more sales. But somebody would say, well, the AI is taking the food out of the artist's mouth. But those people who use AI more times than not was never going to pay an artist.
Yeah.
Same way a pirate, that pirates was never going to buy the item. So, there's a lot of different things. Uh, but that's my take on the whole AI matter.
I agree. Here's another question from James. Do you think at some point there might be an action figures for neon ghosts and the universe you're creating? And is
Okay.
there a particular toy company you would like to work with? So it's a
Okay. So,
two-part question.
yeah. So I am sorry, did not bring it onto the stream with me. I actually have a 3D print of Neon Ghost. So I did a 3D print of her. I was, I'm not so much into the action figures, but I'm more into the statues. I guess
Mhm.
it's to do with my age. I'm not gonna play with them. Uh, if everything was perfect and I could get what I wanted, yes, I would love to have action figures, and I would go with McFarlane Toys as as the producers of it. Um, but I'm also into statues more so. But yeah,
No, I think statues are fine. I think a lot of us to, I think, like to pose the action figures in a certain way. So
mhm,
a lot of people do photo photography and take dioramas and take their action figures and pose them in a certain way. And I've seen it in a lot of groups. But yeah, statues are just as good. And it's kind of cool that you did a 3D print of Neon Ghost. It makes the me think that the creator is thinking outside the box and thinking about other avenues that could
mhm,
take their franchise somewhere, and that's a very good thing. I created several T-shirts for my beautiful people, and people liked them. I did some posters, for the front covers, and I think when you said metal signs and everything, I think that's the next avenue we're going down is metal signs of prints from comic books. Uh, I also thought about taking a page from the 1990s and doing basically, the foil covers,
mhm.
uh,
Yeah,
glow in the dark. You know,
mhm,
yes, they cost a little bit more. The production line is going to be the value of the comic is going to have to be a little bit pricier than you would want it to be. But I think it'd be cool for a variant cover to have, even for Neon Ghost, to have like a glow in the dark kind of
cover.
cover
Yeah, we
to
have
enter.
a spot foil cover. This is a
Hmm.
spot foil cover, and
Yep.
for my previous campaign, we did a hollow foil cover. So when you kind of turn it, it like the cover had a metallic feel. Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, I'm not adverse to doing something like that. You know, who knows? I could even do something like that on this campaign if we get the numbers, because it's a case of having the fan base that could support it in terms of support the print numbers, because you don't want to print a low run just for one book. So that's where, to me, the fans are more important than the, let's say, the dollars. The more fans, it kind of drives everything. So
yeah.
it's not against that. Something else I did too, which you could probably look into, was I did cards. Like
Oh,
the
trading
little cards, like how they had in the trading cards. Yeah, like we had in the 90s. So I have like a trading card. So I did trading cards in my last campaign with the characters, and I did back the characters bio kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been going on to a lot of different publishing websites and everything, and I came across this one, and they were saying trading cards and glow in the dark stuff. And when I looked at the prices and how much quantities you needed to have, it wasn't a bad price. It was like for trading cards, it was maybe if you got like 1,000 trading cards, it was like 150, 200 to
Mm.
produce, which is not bad. It's only 100 or 200. I think with the glow in the dark and the foil, it was a little bit more expensive. It was, if you were going to do a bulk, it would probably be between 2,000, 3,000 to produce, depending on how many pages of the comic book it was. So that it opens up your mind, because as a creator, you're like, okay, I want to do these special things, but what's the cost going to be? And I think when people find out what the costs, you go out there and you find out what the price points are, sometimes you don't want to have to do those extra little things, which would be cool. But if you did a small run,
Mm.
you're spending a whole lot of money, So
Yeah, it's a dance and a balance that you have to kind of do. Uh, that's why people would tend to do that as stretch goals, because at least you have either the numbers or the dollars behind it to justify the changing of a color or cover or introducing cards or something like that. But it's great, especially when the Kickstarter, because the initial back in the day with Kickstarter, when I first used to kind of follow, it was a place where you got stuff that was unique,
mhm.
you know. And when I spoke to a few people and I asked them what would encourage them to back my Kickstarter, they said if they had something on there that, and that kind of stuck with me. So the idea of trying to bring back that exclusivity of a Kickstarter, or that when you got the book from Kickstarter, it's a different edition. It feels better. It's bigger or more pages or stuff like that.
Okay. Will you be offering signatures with your comic book?
Sadly, no, I can't do signatures because of my location and the
Okay.
logistics. To That'd be ridiculous to get done.
Okay. So it'd be too hard of to do all the signing and then shipping it back to him, and then him
Yeah,
sending it out
to actually
to
ship
all
it.
the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be a bit much, or it would be
Yeah.
too expensive. The the expense of it to do the signed copy would be so much. But if I was ever in America, or if someone came here to a convention, by all means, I would sign their copies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I just I just feel like signatures are these days are pretty cool if you can get them. Um, but I also feel like it's a double edged sword, because I see people going out there and getting signatures at comic conventions and then going on eBay and
Mhm.
hype it, and then asking for $2,000, $3,000 for a signature. And you're like, oh, it's on this comic book. It's Spawn #1 with Todd McFarlane's signature on it. I want 5,000 on eBay, and I'm just like, I'm conflicted because I want to personalize the experience for the person that bought my comic, but at the same time, I don't want them going on eBay and going, okay, I
Mm.
got Chris's signature or I got Nigel's signature, and now I want 5,000 for it. That's cool, but
Well,
at the same,
I would like to get to that point that my signature could sell for 5,000.
well, it's definitely
But
cool. Don't get me wrong. I think it'd be
yeah,
cool, but I feel like at some point it's like you're trying to take advantage of a person that really likes what you're
mhm,
doing and trying to
yeah,
profit off it, and we're not, we're trying to personalize it to somebody, and then we're not getting that money back from the person that's selling it on eBay, so,
mhm,
and that's our signature. That's our kind of like
right,
part of our livelihood right there, so I feel like people are kind of taking advantage of it,
right,
but that's why I said it's a double-edged sword. It's you're damn you do, you damn if you don't, because you don't want to make feel like the people that are coming to support you that, oh, I'm not going to sign it, because I remember back in the day when Tom McFarlane was very very young, he had a different mindset. Um, Sometimes he would not sign a certain comic book. Um,
mm,
to people, he would just go, "No, I'm not going to sign the comic book," and um, I just don't feel like it. And now, since he's older, I feel like he's more inclined to sign a lot of things that he's done over the years, and it really doesn't bother him. But it is a double-edged sword. I don't want to take too much more time of you because I know there's a time difference on your end
yes, there's a
compared
little
to
bit.
my end. But as we're leaving this great stream, what words would you have to say to people to get them to back your comic book even more?
Mm. I'd say check out the page. I, if you read this book or if you do get this book, I I don't usually say guarantee, but more than likely, I know you would love it. It's a labor of love. It's one of the best books I've ever done. Um, and I'm not just saying that. A lot of work went into it, and I'm really proud of how it came out. And from the response I've been getting and showing people some of the pages from the trailer, everything, um, people who are interested in this style of book, fans of the genre, you know, they're just loving it. So give it a try. Just go there, check it out. There's something there for there's some back issues of some of my books. You could always kind of just do your research, reach out to me. I would uh, share pages. I would even give you just a sampler that if you so inclined, you could just DM me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll send you a sample copy. Uh, so just kind of support it. But my goal is to try to get to 100 backers, and I'd be happy.
And I also have to say, in the description down below in the stream, I have all of Nigel Lynch's social media ways you can contact him. But before you go, I have one more last question, and then we'll get you out of here. How's that sound, Nigel?
Yeah, yeah, no problem, no problem.
James Lucas says, will you be going to any Comic Cons to promote the comic book?
Okay, so all the conventions I'll be going to will be local in my region in Barbados. But Wiseacres, would be more than likely in the future they'll be handling the books at the different events that the publisher goes to. So, expect the book to be a part of the catalog of Weizsäcker books in the future. Um, and they're now starting to really get out there. So there should be more conventions, maybe some of the bigger conventions as the year goes on. We'll see. And if you follow Weizsäcker Comics, they will kind of keep you posted, and you can kind of see where not only Neon Ghost is, where some of the other titles, Magnus, and some of the other titles that are coming out. There's some really, really good books that are coming out, and you know, I would say it's a good company to follow. There's a lot of good things to come.
Okay. And we just want to say, James says, thank you, Nigel. I'm really looking forward to it. And thanks to
Thank you,
me
James.
as the
Thank you for the support.
me as the host. I really appreciate it, James. Before you go,
Yeah, thank you.
go ahead.
Mhm. I said thank you for letting me come onto your show. Thanks for the invite. I really, really do appreciate it.
And before you go, we're doing something new with each of our guests. If you could say your name and then say
Mhm.
you are watching Comic Book Spotlight, I would really appreciate that.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay. I'm Nigel Lynch, and you're watching Comic Book Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Nigel. And we are going out
No problem.
with a bang.